Hello and welcome to the show. I'm Eric Murphy.
I'm V LaBianca.
This is Skeptic Generation, and we need to talk. Hey!
Hello.
I am back.
You're back.
V, I cannot thank you enough. Last weekend, I woke up the morning of and was having some serious mental health issues, and you sat in and you took over and you did the show, and I really, really appreciate it.
I did it. It
Thank
was
you.
done.
Yeah, and I was watching on my phone in the other room, rooting you on. I'm really happy to be back. Hey, everybody, happy to be here. It always feels weird when I haven't done a show for a while, and it definitely feels like it's been way too long. So I'm glad to be back. Can I just share something before we dive in?
So glad to be back, and look what was waiting for you when you returned.
So, we don't often read emails, and most of our emails that come in are usually, hey, thank you so much for what you do. It was a huge help for me in a time in my life when I was questioning and didn't know how to approach certain ideas. Or, oh, hey, the way that you engaged with this, one particular subject or one particular apologetic finally got me to see it in a way that I really understand. And we really appreciate that. Or other emails that we get are, hey, the approach that you give, one of empathy, one that is almost like a street epistemology type of approach. We're a little more tough than that, generally, but it's one that values honest interlocutors, ongoing conversations with people. That's why it's just us. We do this every weekend so that we can have those follow-up conversations with people and pick up where we left off. It's important. And then every once in a while we get these. And I don't know, I feel like coming back after needing to take some mental health time and reading this, it kind of blew my mind. And I just kind of want to share it because it's... All right, this person
we will keep it anonymous, just because if you email us,
they also use a pseudonym because they're brave enough to send an email, but too cowardly to actually put their name on it.
We will always keep everything anonymous, even if we suspect that it's a pseudonym. I know.
Okay.
I know.
Fair enough.
I'm aware.
Fair enough. Okay. Yeah. We will. And just so you know, my name is Eric Murphy. V's name is V. Anyway, okay, I'm going to read this and then we can get into calls, okay?
In case you were wondering.
A lot of people use pseudonyms. We are in Texas, and we have been right in the heat of things for years, and we have the privilege of being able to stand up where we can and how we can. And so we're going to do that because we think we should. But let me just read this really quick. You're a couple of cheese balls. So that, not bad, right? We are cheese balls. We're cheese balls everywhere we go. That's just the kind of people we are. Your show is cringeworthy watching on the level of the Kardashians. If it's entertaining, cool. And I don't know, I make myself cringe. I edit these videos, I can see it. I'm not... Eric particularly is a smarmy, condescending, fake-ass shitbag. Even his vomit-inducing, hey, greetings is disingenuous smegma. Okay, so here's the thing.
I want to know what genuine smegma is, as opposed to...
right? Well, it's...
How does one vomit forth genuine smegma?
Here's kind of what gets me on it is... this has been something that has kind of been a part of me throughout my life is I wear my heart on my sleeve. It is my best defense in, the way I go about my life is I try to be as straightforward as I can, and you get what you get, and we don't have miscommunications. But a lot of people take that as kind of used car salesman fake. I can't really change that. I can't change the face. It's authentic. You can believe it or not for those people who've met me in real life.
He was born with a fake car salesman face, you guys. We can't fix this.
Right? Please stop. I'm very pleased I haven't heard him say, that's my jammy jam in a long time. I'm going to use that much more often now because I love that saying. Let's see, his mind stabbingly pop advice gibberish and paper-thin commitment to well-thought discourse sends shivers down my spine. You know,
It is more well written than most of our troll.
it is. It is. And I've got to tell you, I do worry, that I could be putting more into things. I could be more esoteric in my responses, and I have been. But
we actually had that conversation when I first started on the show with you, and I was like, stop it. I was like, stop using the esoteric language that you use, because the average person isn't going to be able to feel like they were seen through your answer. And you stopped doing that, and now you're getting flack for it. So it's my fault. I apologize.
No. But I get it. It is a goal, though, of this show to try and put things in a way that people can understand, that cuts through a lot of the language that people use so that they can be not seen. A lot of people use very, very big words to try and hide behind so that they don't get questioned, because if you can't re-describe something in simple language, then maybe you don't understand it as well as you thought. Please stop calling it the lower third. It's called the Chiron. When's the last time we had a lower third?
A while ago.
I don't know.
Ago. I mean, to be fair, if this person only saw a couple of the first episodes, yes, it was cheesy. It was really bad, because we were really just trying to figure out how to do all the things on our own. And maybe if that's what you were looking at with the lower third. Maybe.
Yeah,
I totally get that.
They throw some shade your way. I'm not going to go on that one. But they go on at the end to suppose why we're no longer on Talk Heathen, and it's that we're unbearable. We posted about why we're not on Talk Heathen. You can go on our Twitters about that. We had posted that on Facebook as well. That information is out there to the extent that we want to get involved and engage. But the thing is, just like the rest of what we do, we try not to sling mud, and we want to move forward and do the best we can with what we have, and build community, and not, set things on fire. So cool. Here's my statement to the troll and to anybody else who doesn't like the face, doesn't like the voice, doesn't like the face, the voice, the show, the whatever. That's totally okay. It really is. It's totally okay. It has taken me a long time, and I still cringe at my face and voice. I want you to find the show that you like. There are other shows. What I want you to do is I want you to find where you're able to engage with philosophical discourse in a way that's interesting and exciting to you, and that gives you tools to be able to have meaningful, productive conversations with people. I want you to be able to find something you can listen to on your way to work. And if that's not us, I totally get it. If we're not your bag, if we're not your jammy jam, that's fine. Find what works for you. I deeply encourage that for you. I want you to find those other programs, because there are some great hosts out there. There are some great programs that really do a great job of having those conversations without resorting to name calling or to, appealing to the least common denominator. We can do better than that. So I hope you find what works for you. That's my rant. I apologize. I'm back. And after taking a mental health break, kind of reading that and listening to, that kind of feedback, I see where that's coming from. But at the same time, it does re-engage me. It makes me go, you know what? This is needed. And it's important that we do this. And we're not everybody's bag, but that's okay. We don't need to be. The internet is a really big place, and we're just a couple of assholes on the internet. We've said that many times, and we're just doing our best. So if you're here, welcome. We're glad you're here. Let's move on to calls. I know that I've kind of gone on a bit of a tangent, so thank you for your patience.
My goodness. So speaking of calls, if you would like to talk to these cheeseballs, feel free to call us at 585-526-8774 or use the link at tiny.cc/callSG. Both of those are completely free for you. We pay for that on our end. If you are international, it is free if you use the link. And we have a call screener ready to go. It's like we have two today. Wow, look at that. So we've got call screeners ready to take your call, ready to patch you through. We would love to talk to you. That's absolutely right.
before we dive in, or you know what? No, I'll throw stuff out afterwards. I did have one other thing to say, and that is that I hate to put your name out there, Samantha, but it's important that we bring something up. We had a patron reach out and say, "Hey, you know, my name got dropped from the credits. I support you guys, and I don't want to make it seem like that." And we get it. Here's the deal. I had some file transfers go kind of funky, and some things revert back to older versions of themselves when it comes to the end credits video. And I think some names dropped off. I'm doing my best to fix that. But if you're a patron and you're like, man, my name hasn't been coming up, please reach out, because if we got a message from one person, I guarantee we got that there are several people who are like, man, how come I'm not turning up? I've been supporting the show and all of a sudden I got pulled off. Like, no, it was not on purpose. Please give us the opportunity to fix it. And I sincerely apologize for the mix up. We're going to do our absolute best to make sure that it reflects all of the people who are supporting us, and we sincerely appreciate it. If you like what we do and you want to support us, consider going to patreon.com/skepticgeneration. We do a free version of the podcast, free version of this live show, and it really goes to help us. We've had some drop off, and every little bit helps. If you want to be able to support us and not go on Patreon, that is totally okay. Hit like, hit subscribe, hit the notification bell, and share this video out, because that's how we get good callers. People go, oh, how come you talk to the same callers, you know, every time? Are you just picking people that you know you can own? We take almost every caller we can.
And that's assuming we own them all, which we don't.
No, but like, we're limited to the people who call in. So if you don't like the quality of the caller, talk to that crazy uncle. Get them to call in. We could use those callers. We could use those conversations. It's difficult to drum them up, and we would love to see them, and we'd love to elevate the discourse, but we need your help. Okay, now I'm done talking. Who are we talking to first?
Let's talk to Sourfruit in Canada.
Ooh.
Sourfruit called in last week, or the week before.
Mm-hmm. Right at the end,
right? At the very end, and we asked her to call back, and she has. So I'm very excited to talk with her.
Good. Sourfruit in Canada. You're live with Eric and V.
Hi. Happy Sunday. I don't know what to say.
Hello.
Hello. No worries. Thank you for calling in. So last time you wanted to talk about being lonely, feeling lonely as an atheist in another country, and how being Black has affected your experience and what the perspective is on atheism. And we'd love to talk about it, because it's something that not a lot of people talk about. So where are you? Talk to us. What's been going on?
Yeah, I guess I became an atheist when I was like 16. It doesn't really matter what that is, but like when I finally came out to my parents, they were way more receptive than the average Nigerian parent would be. My whole family is more progressive than the average Nigerian family, but even with that, there's still a lot of like microaggressions that come with being a Black atheist, and also a Black woman in Canada. And it's so hard to navigate through those two like parts of my life, because sometimes my family and I went on a trip to Quebec City, and my mom basically forced me to pray, even though she knows my religious non-affiliation. And everyone didn't see a problem with that. And after the fact, when I was speaking with my therapist, I was like, I should have just given them a Muslim prayer, because then I'd have done what I wanted to do, and also kind of been a little bit snarky.
Yeah.
But, yeah. And I've joined the atheist groups in Montreal. It's not bad. It's fine. But they're all older than me, and they're all mostly white. And there's nothing wrong with that, because we have amazing conversations. But there was once, sometimes, yeah, we're all atheists, but we don't all have the same, we don't all think the same socially. So there was an older white guy who was like, oh, colonization wasn't that bad. And I was like, fuck you. It really hurts.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
We had a caller a few months ago who said that it was Europeans who civilized natives in Canada.
I'm so glad you hung up on his ass so fast. I was like, thank you.
It's kind of wild that there are so many people who are privileged enough to be far away from that kind of bigotry that they think it's no longer an issue. When the fact is, we see it all the time.
Or even to think that it's like you could validate it, like it's something that you should prop up. Like I don't know.
No, you're absolutely right. First off, we're glad you found us. We're really glad you found us. I don't have your experience. I do have the experience of being Mexican in the United States and in the South. V has the experience of being non-binary in the South. We both have
a lot of in the South experience at this point, which is not great.
Yeah. And so to the degree that we can empathize a lot is, the kind of lived experience we have, but we don't want to make assumptions. So did you want to talk about the colonizer bullshit, or what specifically? Because I could go off on a tangent, but I want to kind of meet you where you are.
More specifically, I never actually got to the loneliness. I'm just realizing, which is really what my problem is. It's because atheism isn't seen as something that is black. It's not something that most black people would associate themselves with. To flat out say, I don't believe, or I'm not convinced that there's a God. A lot of them think when you take the idea of, like, if you adopt the identity as an atheist, then you're saying that you hate God, you hate this, you hate religion, you are affiliating yourself with the devil necessarily. I've had moments where I'm trying to speak with my mom and she's talking to me about how her pastor, because that's also another weird thing, but my mom is Christian, but she also engages with the traditional practices from where I'm from. So that means going to, like, priests who aren't Christian priests. And that means I also grew up with that, which isn't very common for the average Nigerian, but that's by the way. But I'd have her tell me things like, my pastor said you should do this, my pastor is saying this, and there's a lot of, like, well, I'm sure it happens in the evangelical churches as well. It's like the visions, the prophecies, and it's like that. But I think even, I wouldn't say even more, but like obsessive. Like every single thing in her life is determined by what she believes a pastor is going to say, or what she thinks, like, an enemy is after her, but she doesn't have any enemies. Yeah. And, like,
that's one of the weirdest. Really, like, I totally understand the frustration with a parent thinking that they are in some kind of danger when they aren't, and listening to someone who is telling them that they are in some kind of danger or have enemies. That is so deeply an issue in my experience as well with my family, especially my mom, where there's just this, but you're fine, you're actually okay. Like, other things, like, we can deal with, but, like, when it comes to, like, enemies that you think you have, like, you're actually a lot safer than you think you are. Oh yeah. And it's heartbreaking.
I mean, genuinely, at my church, we were taught that atheists and satanic people were thinking about us all of the time, that we were in their thoughts, and they were trying to, like Snidely Whiplash with the mustache twirling kind of, ridiculous evilness, well, I'm going to do this thing. I'm going to go take time out of my day to go downtown and tempt people. And that's going to plant the seed away. But also the experience that I have that kind of what you said makes me think of is, have you heard of a curandera?
Oh yeah, it's something like that.
Yeah. So for people who don't know what that is, it's a medicine woman. It's essentially someone who would be in charge of, health and well-being of a group. And so going to the curandera is similar to going to a family doctor, somebody who would use kind of I say natural remedies, but yeah, remedies that have been passed down culturally for different problems. And it is so interesting seeing it like Christianized and seeing other cultures that have Christianized their own like curanderas is so weird.
Santeria? It's kind of like Santeria.
Yes, absolutely. That is such a yes, yes. Sourfruit, you're absolutely yeah. So, but seeing that, yeah. You know what's extra frustrating about it is that like you see where they're coming from. You see how they justify it in their minds, and you know that they're not being malicious. They're just assuming maliciousness on the part of everybody else. And it is so frustrating. I'm so glad we live in 2022, because at least you're able to reach out and, you know, talk to us and find other people. And I know that you're not able to, like, your experience in an atheist group and finding people who, oh, wow, you moved away from religion, but you're still a fucking bigot. People don't realize that that's still the case. But I really do urge you to not give up. Keep searching, because that community is there for you. We have a growing community that interacts on our Facebook and in our Discord, but that is definitely not enough. I mean, I really do. Please keep looking, because they're there, and you deserve community. You deserve support, and you deserve people who see you.
I think I do also want to just validate you for a moment as well, in that I've listened to other Black atheists in my life, and especially the ones U.S. specific, of course, and there is a huge difference from my understanding, and I'd be curious if you feel this way as well, between what it means for a white person to leave religion versus what it means for a Black person to leave religion, especially if there's like a cultural heritage beyond Christianity that is, you know, ingrained in the cultural, you know, makeup of that family or that person or that community. Because in the United States, there isn't the need, like, the options are not be safe in your church community or like be alone. Like, that is not an issue that a lot of white people, not all, but a lot of white people don't have to deal with. I can leave my church, and yes, it was heartbreaking, and yes, that community was lost to me, but it wasn't really the only like big option for me, right? I don't know, there's this lack of options that is a lot more kind of stark for a lot of Black atheists in the United States, just because religion does play such an integral community role, and that support and that kind of mutual aid building is very church-based. And without that, there's a lot of danger and there's a lot of isolation that can occur. So when you're around a bunch of white atheists and they're all like, oh yeah, God stuff, that's stupid. Anyway, like, I don't make that, I don't care about like talking about religion or community or identity at all. Like, I'm just an atheist, and that means I'm logical and rational.
Now let's like, talk about the bell curve.
Right. It's like, okay, like, oh God. It can be so isolating because they just simply don't understand that the result of leaving religion is so much different on like a personal and community level. I'm curious, is that the same in Canada? Are you feeling similarly there?
So I should preface this by saying, even when I was growing up, my parents were religious, so we didn't used to frequent church. So we didn't used to go to church very often. And I would be the one be like, let's go to church so we don't go to hell, because I was very scared. But it's not necessarily the loss of community, or it's not necessarily the loss of a church community. It's just alienating myself more from the community that I'm already a little bit alienated from to begin with. And because I'm not originally from Montreal, I spent most of my life in Nigeria and Senegal. It means that I also didn't really have. It also means that, like, even within this context here, where we're talking about like atheists who are black, who might have lived their entire lives in North America, I'm also alienated from that community because I'm Nigerian. I'm not Canadian. So it's just not really finding a place where I fit in.
Yeah.
And even when I was like an atheist and I was like, oh, this is my place. It's like, no, still not that way. So.
You know, so this isn't going to be the best answer, but it's the best that I've been able to find. If other people have better answers, please reach out. But I've found that when I plug myself into a few different communities for the things that I need, it works best for me. Being biracial, it's kind of interesting because I haven't met a Mexican community that has seen me as Mexican. You know, and anytime I'm in a white group, which I am around a lot in freaking Texas, every time I speak up around very, very, like-minded atheist folks, they, want to make sure that they listen so that the brown guy makes sure is heard. And it's very sweet. But at the same time, it's like, you don't see me as one of you, and it sucks. But when I, get into board games and card games, and, if I get into Magic the Gathering and I go down to a shop and I play Magic, on Fridays, I don't need those people to believe or agree with me when it comes to geopolitics. If I'm with other atheists, that's fantastic. I don't need them to kind of see me when it comes to my cultural heritage. And I know it's not nice, and a lot of people get to have that all bundled together, but picking and going, hey, here's what I need, here's what I want, and grabbing those pieces has helped me in the past. Like finding another Mexican atheist who cares about this stuff as much as me. I found a dude in San Antonio. He was awesome. And he saw me as the biracial person that I am. He's also several hours away, and we don't agree on everything, turns out. You know what I'm talking about?
Yep.
And it like looking for that, I think, set a standard for myself that I was never able to meet. But try branching out. That's at least what's worked for me, and I know that's not the best advice, but it's what I have to offer from my lived experience.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Thank you for calling in, Sourfruit. I'm glad that you called back and that we could have this conversation, because you are not alone, and there are so many people who are going to listen to this and empathize with your situation and be like, yes, me too. That is my experience as well, and this will help them. For those people, I don't know if there is a Canada branch or if there could be, but I do want to make sure that I plug Black Non-Believers, because I would be remiss not to with this conversation. It is a atheist group very similar, Sourfruit, to what you described, as different atheist groups in your area. They're all over the U.S. They don't have a Canadian branch, I don't believe, but it might be worth reaching out, seeing if that's something that maybe a chapter could start up in, where you live, if that's something you're interested in. Or if you are in the United States, they've got chapters in Georgia, North Carolina, Michigan, New York, Oregon, Washington, D.C. So, yeah, go check them out.
And also, Mandisa is very reachable.
Yeah.
You're right, that is a really great resource.
Yeah, I'll link the website into the description of this call, so awesome. Everyone has access. Oh, and the Hotline Project. The Hotline Project that Recovering from Religion does, they have an amazing, huge set of just connections and information about atheist skeptic groups and all of that stuff all over the world. Mm-hmm. They might be able to help too. Awesome. Well, those links will be in the description as resources. And Sourfruit, thank you so much for calling in.
Thank you, Sourfruit.
Of course. Thanks. Have a nice day.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.
I really dislike this mouse. It is.
It's quiet though.
It's nice and quiet, but also like it takes me forever to like hit anything.
Yeah, the buttons are really squishy, but it is the quietest mouse that we could find, so that it's nice to listen to the podcast still. Yeah. That was nice, especially given that email, the disingenuous, like, that wasn't a performance. That's just us putting our hearts out there. I don't fucking know. Anyway, who should we talk to next?
Well, it seems like all three calls at this point have something to do with being queer or trans on some level, which is an interesting direction for sure.
Let's take the theist first.
All right.
Joe wants to get our opinion on Canada. Looks like it is a Canada episode.
Apparently. Joe also called in last week and we had a really good conversation, so I'm glad you're calling back.
Yeah. Hey, Joe.
Hi, guys.
Hey, so what's going on? What did you want to get our take on?
This was, it was. I called in last week. Thanks for the convo last week, V.
Yeah.
And normally I don't call in 2 weeks in a row, but this is a story that I heard about, I think, on Tuesday, and it was such a bizarre story that that it was just, I couldn't help but immediately think, okay, I have to call Skeptic again this weekend.
What's going on?
This was a story that came out of Canada, Ontario, I believe, and one of the school districts there has a teacher who is transitioning to a woman, and a controversy stirred up when this teacher, who has not fully transitioned yet, started coming to school wearing humongous fake prosthetic breasts, like something that you would see in fetish porn websites.
Oh, I saw this on Twitter. Yeah.
And naturally, Fox and I'm pretty sure the Daily Wire have both already done short pieces about this. And Canada has, the school district at least, has stood behind the whole thing and said, no, this person isn't going to be fired, and they haven't really commented much beyond saying, no, we aren't going to fire this person. And it was just, that whole situation is so incredibly bizarre to me, because I consider myself an ally, and I realize I'm kind of the worst person to be calling in and talking about this as a cis white man, but it's just such a bizarre story, because in all honesty, that, to me, that looks as though, like, when trans issues first started to become issues that were talked about frequently, there were, people that you would expect who were freaking out saying, it's going to ruin everything, and just...
It'll ruin all of the things, the beautiful things we have built.
Right.
Yeah.
It's standard reactionary bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
But then I see this story, and it's just like, ugh, because it almost comes across like, ironically, there's another story out of Canada. This one has kind of died quite a while ago, but there's another story out of Canada, which was the first kind of story that I came across, that was a transitioning person. I cannot remember their name. Who?
Well,
I know what.
That's okay. Can I
I know
jump?
what I know what their male name was. It was Jonathan something.
All right.
And
their dead name. Yeah, let's talk about this story, because he gave us a lot there. So
okay, I'm sorry.
no, it's okay.
I'm rambling.
That's okay. We've been doing this for years and we still ramble. So I looked up the story while you were talking, and my very first thought is I have had teachers who look exactly like this. And I don't, like, I don't know. It's interesting. If you have a trans man who has got like a big ol' schlong, like, is that, you know, oh God, I could see it. It's going halfway down his leg. Like, I had a shop teacher like that who was cis, and nobody said shit. I don't understand why people are focused on size of things when the fact is it just makes no, I don't get it.
I do.
What do you get?
It's well, the term that is used is transmisogyny, but it is misogyny specifically towards a trans person, because what we are doing is now analyzing the transness of this person through a lens of misogyny. And this is not the first teacher to get in trouble for this kind of thing. And this is not the first teacher who was told by, you know, conservatives on Fox News or wherever that, like, oh, you can't dress like that in front of kids. And it was just their body, right? And it was just this person had a hourglass figure that was, you know, frankly quite impressive. And they just dressed like a normal person. And it is a problem that a lot of women in teaching spaces face specifically. And what we are talking about here is kind of a misdirection, right? Because we can talk about the transness of this person, right? And whether or not she, you know, if this is a problem because she's trans, or like, is this a thing that just happens when you let trans people teach, or, you know, that's not the problem. The problem is that conservative men have an obsession with controlling women's bodies, especially certain parts of them. And if you see them, that is a threat in some way, shape, or form. Does it matter if they are prosthetic? I don't know. I don't really care. Does it matter that she is trans? No. If this was a cis woman who walked in like this, the argument would still be, oh my goodness, how on earth could we possibly allow this? And you ask yourself, allow what? Like somebody to dress themselves and be in public? Like, what are you allowing here? Yeah. So what I would say about this story is that focusing on the transness of the person involved, the gender identity, is a misdirection. And what we need to be talking about is the fact that women, regardless of their, you know, cisness or transness, do face this issue all of the time for teaching while being, you know, attractive in some way, or having a large ass or large breasts. Like, it's or
my shop teacher, if you're watching this, Mr. Rickards, we all knew.
Oh my God.
We all knew.
This is getting inappropriate.
What?
All right.
Well, before we move on, though, we were getting a couple of comments in the chat that I do want to.
I do want to ask if Joe has a response to that, though.
I guess my thought, and I totally understand that that if a cis woman did it, then the conversation would be the same, and I'm with you, V, that I don't necessarily care that this person is trans. It's just I feel like this was they had to have known. But, you know what I mean? And not that they did it intentionally. It was like, oh, I'm going to wear huge prosthetic breasts and it's going to cause a shitstorm. But
I think we can all...
But at that point, it's kind of tone policing.
No, at this point, we get into the conversation of the model minority. And we get into the conversation of, at what point does somebody have to be self-limiting in order to represent a larger group effectively, or in a way that is not controversial to the majority. And that is a requirement that we only put on certain people, right? And so if this was going to be an issue regardless of this woman's gender, then what we need to be talking about is the issue and not the gender. And if what we do is say, well, If this was a cis woman, then we would just be rightfully upset about the fact that people are policing her body. But because it's a trans woman, shouldn't she have thought this through a little bit more? Or shouldn't she have done something differently? That becomes a conversation of, all right, what rights over someone's body or self-expression are we taking away because it would be better for society if they did it in this way, or better for community, PR if they present it in this. We get into some really sticky situations, and if we follow that through to its logical conclusion, it gets kind of ugly really quickly. So I get where you're coming from, but it's a dangerous path down that road, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Because, at that point, it is, good call.
Yeah.
So, Joe, as somebody who still views themselves as theist, is there a different approach or view to it that you have, or where are you sitting on this?
I don't know. And I mean, I totally understand what V is saying regarding, the model minority and how that can become, unfortunately, a little bit of a slippery slope. But it's just like, let me give an example of religion. If Christianity if Christianity had just appeared in the last 50 years and it was something that was controversial when it very first appeared, and now it's starting to become more accepted, and not everybody's into it, but it's starting to become more accepted. And now there's, some controversies and some arguments between differing sides of, Christianity is great and we should accept them, versus, they're horrible and they're going to ruin everything. And then the Westboro Baptist Church shows up. It's okay. That's how I view it. And obviously this person didn't do what they were doing with the intent of causing a firestorm.
Well, also, it's not a hate crime like the Westboro Baptist.
Obviously.
But
Westboro Baptist Church is the best
see what
example
you're saying, hey, if I were in this position, I would have done it differently. That's fair. Cool. Yeah. That is 100% in your right to say that, right? I would have done that differently
right.
if
and
I
was
in that.
Also, kind of hindsight being 2020.
Right, and it's just else. Okay, well, Joe, if you come out tomorrow, if you realize that you are a trans woman and you get a teaching job, don't wear large prosthetic breasts, I guess. And
do make it normal.
But that's the thing. We cannot tell one way or the other. For this woman, she may have been making a statement. She may have just been following what she knew her body should look like. I can't speak to that. We cannot tell somebody to become a revolutionary for the greater good, and we also cannot tell someone to stop being themselves or stop identifying in certain ways because of the greater good, right? The greater good is a really bad excuse when the majority is the one deciding what the greater good is. So I hear you, and my takeaway from this is Joe would have done it differently, and that's fair.
And I honestly...
Sure, and I guess that's kind of what it is at its core.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For lack of a better word.
Yeah.
Can I take a stab?
Sure.
Yeah. Contextually, I think that media outlets look for extreme examples of things to try to paint the larger group with the extreme example that they find in order to disempower it or to...
Sure, it's sensationalism.
Sensationalism, and there are a number of fallacies that are, tangentially connected there. Mm-hmm. But kind of recognizing it for what it is definitely is important. There was one thing that came up in the chat really quick that I want to address before we move on to the next caller. And that was a few people had asked, I said dead name, and a couple of people are like, what the heck is that? And I realized that we're a show that people are finding every day. And so their access to conversations and experiencing conversations around these topics is not what we assume. So I just kind of want to offer up a quick definition for a dead name for other people who may be watching who don't know what that is. People have other reasons. People can have a lot of different reasons to change their names. If you are transitioning, changing your name happens pretty often. When you change your name and go by a new name, you would hope that people would use your new name. When someone refuses or uses the quote dead name, the name that you had before, it's a way of invalidating. It's a way of saying, you're not really, you're somehow not who you say you are. It's this. It can be a really, really cruel way of singling somebody out, calling them by a name that they don't use or don't have anymore. So dead naming is simply using that old name. And we point it out and we have a term for it because it has happened so much that we find that that definition is quicker and easier to have that conversation. Did I about hit that right?
Yeah, I think it's different for everybody, but in general, it's just a polite thing to do in the same way that, when someone gets married, you start referring to them to, if it's a woman who gets married, takes her husband's name, you refer to her as the new name, Mrs. Whoever, Mrs. Smith, as opposed to, Miss Jones. It's just like a thing you do. And it's just weird if you don't, because then it just becomes a situation where you're like,
do I hate your husband?
I take it. Or no, not even that. Just like, you probably don't know. Therefore, we aren't as close as I thought. Let me fill you in.
Right.
And if you keep doing it, you're just like, why isn't sticking for you? But Joe, that's going a little far afield.
Well, I just wanted to address it because I saw it going on in the live chat, and I wanted to make sure that if one person brings it up, that means there are 20 other people who are wondering about it. Joe, thank you for calling in. I listened to the conversation y'all had last week, and I'm really glad you're calling in. These are fun.
Yep. Thanks for taking me on again.
Absolutely.
You. Take care.
Bye.
Okay. So, holy shit. We've got some calls. Do you want to take the extreme one?
Sure.
Okay.
Give me 1 second to pop all this info in here.
Sure.
There we go.
So this person, it says they think that LGBTQIA/GRSM should include straight people. Like super straights? I'm not sure.
Oh, can we not bring super straights into this, please?
I hope not. Kay.
Am I the extreme one?
I don't know.
It
Kay.
depends where you're going with this, man. What's up?
Oh, okay. Well, before I even get to that topic, can I comment on that last call?
Let's keep it brief.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm an atheist liberal, and I saw that picture, and transness was never part of the equation. I also thought it was wrong, because if it was a white guy wearing a prosthetic, 2-foot cock, everybody would be calling him out. I don't think we have to the transness thing.
I think V hit it more on the misogyny, because I'm telling you, my shop teacher had a real big one and nobody talked about
Oh
it.
my God. All right. Okay. What is your question?
Yeah, what do you got?
Okay, so basically, and I have to give you an analogy, because it's the only way you can understand where I'm coming from. So Christianity is a dying breed, and in 20 years, atheism is going to be the majority. And I also think that Islam is going to be also the main religion. And people who are Christians today are going to wish they were secular tomorrow, right?
Wait, people who are what today are going to wish they're secular?
Religious?
Why?
Secular. Well, because it's to protect your rights, regardless of whatever religion you're a part of.
Well, you think that if you're not part of the majority, you don't have rights?
I'm saying that just because you're a part of the majority today doesn't mean that you're not going to be part of the majority tomorrow. So if you're against gay rights or LGBT, you should be in favor, because tomorrow you might not be allowed to be straight. And, this all protects your right to have sex with whoever you want, regardless of who's the majority today. That's
I mean,
where I'm coming from.
okay. Well, I have questions, but is that your point, that you should be in favor of the rights of the minority because you might be the minority one day?
Not of the minority, of the right itself. Like, I'm in favor of the free, of the First Amendment, but I'm not in favor of it because of the minority. I just want to say whatever I think, right? Regardless of what the minority is today.
Okay, so let me. Can I take a stab at this? So are you?
Sure.
Are you saying that it sounds like I'm reading the notes? It says we shouldn't focus on minorities, but instead include everyone. And yes. Are you in the United States? You don't need to tell me where exactly, but are you in the United States? Do you have that lived experience?
I will say yes, I'm in the United States, but I was raised in another country. Question. If I answered no, how would your answer change? My
answer would give you a little bit more history on United States geopolitics or just cultural politics to kind of put what I was going to say in context. Like if you didn't have that experience, then me referencing, what we experienced with BLM or, any other, Rodney King or fucking the Zoot Suit riots. I mean, shit, like you go back in time and you see places where minority groups were absolutely fucking wrecked by the white majority.
Sure.
And when the conversation is had around, hey, we need to discuss how we're treating this group of people awfully, the response, well, we should just be talking about everybody, has been used historically to shut down that conversation and to invalidate the fact that one specific group is getting targeted. And so if we don't at least recognize that, a group is getting targeted, how can we make sure that that group stops getting targeted in the future?
It's not mutually...
Go ahead.
It's not mutually exclusive. You can still, recognize that gay people are being targeted today, and not just gay people, but, every other non-straight person, and still say that, hey, we shouldn't emphasize that aspect of the right, because I gave this ridiculous analogy to the call screener that in 300 years from now, there's going to be a lesbian rebellion, and they're going to stop you from being straight, and you're going to wish you had defended, the rights of people to have sex with whoever they wanted, because they also protect you. If you might not know it, but they also protect you.
Well, and
I know it's a stupid analogy, but
no, it's the one you came up with, and as long as we can understand where you're coming from, we can move forward.
Okay.
I hate to shift a bit, but I want to ask for clarification on this note. Are you saying that LGBTQ people should include straight in that group?
I think it should be renamed to sexual preference movement to include everybody.
Okay.
Just like how there isn't the First Amendment isn't right to say things that are it's just freedom of speech, and then it includes everybody.
Sure. So do you think that if you're not included, you're not going to advocate for that group? Because I'm Latino and Latinx communities exist, and I don't feel the need to include non-Latinx people when I say Latinx because I'm referencing a specific group. Should I...
What was the example again? Sorry.
Sure. Should I call all people Latinx?
Well, it's not a movement.
You'd be surprised.
Well, I mean, I think that there is a difference here as well. Are you specifically talking about what movement are you talking about?
Or the right, whatever you want to call it, movement, right? LGBTQIA.
Well,
I told the call screener also that. Yeah, sorry.
There are different things. So LGBTQIA is a description of a certain kind of person. There's no inherent argument or movement in that term. It's just, hey, fruits versus vegetables, right? Why would we say, why would you care if you're eating a berry or a legume? They're all food. And it's not saying one is better than the other. It's just saying, hey, we make distinctions about different things to help us better identify the world around us and to make categories. And LGBTQIA is just a category of a certain type of person, as opposed to, straight cis hetero people, which is another type of person.
Why was that categorization made?
It was made, this is a good question. So initially, the reason that this category was made was to grow awareness. So initially, it did start out in a way that was like, hey, we are all in some way, shape, or form not straight. And we would like to be acknowledged, because right now we're being either just ignored or actively repressed. So if we talk about ourselves as a larger group, it will get more attention from the people who are not us, and we will be able to build a category where we belong. And since then, it has just become a way to describe people who are not straight. Now, GRSM is a different thing entirely, even though there is a lot of overlap. GRSM is gender, romantic, and sexual minorities, right? Minority is in the name. So first of all, straight people couldn't be part of the GRSM community because they are not a sexual, romantic, or gender minority. That said, that particular thing is a movement. And that is, hey, we are a minority who are not being given the same attention or rights as other people. So we're drawing attention to that. And ultimately, yeah, it would be great if everybody could just be like, hey, love who you love, have sex the way you want to have sex, and we don't care, just do your thing, don't hurt anyone. Unfortunately, that's not the world we live in. So this is a stopgap. The goal is not to subdivide into as many little insular communities as possible in order to, be just like everybody else. The goal is to eventually get to where I think you're going, which is just talk about the right, just make sure everyone has it regardless of their status, and that's the end of the conversation. Unfortunately, we're not there. And so things like GRSM and things that are moving in that direction right now are aggressively this group, right? We are a minority, and we're going to draw attention to that so that we get that attention, because there is no way to move forward without that attention. Ultimately, one day, yeah, everybody is just going to be exactly who they want to be. Will there be more labels? Probably. Will there be fewer? Maybe. We don't know what the future will look like. That said, it probably doesn't include a lesbian rebellion, although, hey, that sounds kind of awesome.
So can I provide an example to that? Because I think you hit the nail on the head. We don't talk about miscegenation in this country anywhere near as much as we used to.
Do you want to
About what,
define
I'm sorry?
Miscegenation.
Define that word?
No worries. If you Google search it, it will depress you, and I encourage you to do it. It's mixed race couples.
Okay.
And that was illegal in the United States for a very long time. And the rights of people of different racial backgrounds to marry and have kids needed to be fought for. And so it was a conversation that people were having a lot, and being in a mixed race relationship was a really big deal. V and I are getting married, and this is technically miscegenation, but it's not a label that's useful for us, because it's not something that we are actively needing to fight for, and so it stopped. We don't really think about it.
Right.
I mean, if I were to say mixed race couple, that's kind of weird nowadays, thank goodness. Maybe I'm in a bubble, but it's not as big a deal as it used to be, so maybe in that way.
That's a really good example. Yeah. Right now we Sorry, go ahead, Kay.
If I was to take a stab at the whole miscegenation thing, I would just say that races as we conceive them do not exist. Right? There's only a phenotypes, if I remember correctly. So, the whole thing about, if you're white European, the Saxons probably raped the Anglicans, and I don't know how many other types of white people there were, and they all got mixed together. So you already mixed race. Just because it doesn't show doesn't mean that you're not that.
I mean, so while you can say that to us, try telling that to the Proud Boys who think that they need to protect and preserve the white race. You're preaching to the choir on that one, okay? But I know, hopefully this has been an interesting conversation. I know that it got a lot of people talking in the comments.
What are they saying?
Go back and read it. People are, it's just been an ongoing commentary about what's been going on.
Right.
Yeah. Vishanti, you should call in at some point about things. You've been having a lot of things to say, and some I agree with and some I'd love to talk about. But Kay, thank you for calling in.
Thank you. By the way, I didn't know you were Mexican.
Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
I know. I know.
You look like one of my uncles. You're probably his doppelganger.
Oh my
And it's
god!
funny because
That's funny.
his name is Jesus, and he's the most atheist guy, and we make fun of him because of that.
Oh yeah, no. So my family has gone back into it, and on my grandfather's side, it goes back to Walara, and apparently I've got a good amount of Aztecan blood, and obviously Spanish. The last name is Morones. And on my grandmother's side, there are some old school Tejanos, which is really cool. You know, I moved to Texas not knowing that I've got family history that came through here and left during the Spanish-American War. So anyway, yeah, absolutely. It's a part of me that I haven't gotten to explore until I've been an adult, and trying to learn about it and myself and how that is a part of who I am is something that I'm excited to learn about. So, yeah.
If I could give you some advice about that, I would just say don't focus too much on it, because there's a difference between what you are and who you are. And a lot of people when I was growing up would say that I'm not Mexican enough because I don't believe in the Virgin of Guadalupe.
Right. Yeah. But at the same time, growing up mixed race, I'm sorry, I know we're going to move on to the next call. At the same time, growing up I never got to be a part of a group. And so any interest in my heritage, any interest in those things, I've really developed kind of as an adult, because it wasn't something that I felt included in. I didn't feel included in my white side because I was always the Mexican of the group when I was around white friends. And I wasn't, and yeah, right? And when I was around, Mexican family or Mexican friends, I was a white guy. And so,
well, you're not either. You're both at the same time. You're
right. Yeah, I had a good friend tell me that I don't need to fight to be Latino, because I am Latino. So my experience is a Latino experience, and that can't be argued about because it just is. So that's what I hold on to when I feel weird about it. But Kay, we got to get on to the next caller. Thank you for that.
We're gonna talk about this some other day.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Have a good one.
You too.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Yeah. I don't know. Okay.
I feel like I think what we just saw there was so interesting to me. The openness and education that Kay has clearly engaged in around the concept of race, and how he opened up when you were talking, and you guys had this really not 101 conversation about it, because it's something that has affected both of you. Yeah. And you've needed to develop that education just as self-preservation and as for the purpose of educating other people so they're less confused or less afraid or whatever. And I'm just asking Kay to trust that the LGBTQ community has done the same thing, and speaking about it in black and white. It should be everybody, there is a level of education for myself and for other people that I have engaged in, just to be able to have the aesthetic nuance. Why did I mix those words up? Those are two completely different words.
The way it looks can be. I get where you're going with it.
Yeah. There's a nuance there that I've been able to get into that maybe Kay isn't, which is why it's a little more confusing. That Kay clearly has engaged in on other topics. So right. I think it's interesting.
Well, I'm actually glad. I feel I'm hoping that experience and that example can help bridge that and show those similarities.
Yeah.
Also, as an aside, before we move on, there are people who are saying, there are some people in the comments who are very upset about the term Latinx. I feel you. I've called myself Latino always. And I recognize, though, that more and more people are using the term. That term also includes me, and I want to be understood. So I'm not going to be prescriptivist about the language, but I'm going to see what's being used. And if it makes other people feel included in that, that's okay, because holy crap, I've spent my whole life feeling disincluded from my own race. So it wasn't a big stretch for me, but then again, I probably don't have enough time in conversation about that topic to have a more nuanced conversation. So I will endeavor to learn. But in the meantime, we have Ameet, who's calling back from New York. And this really has been an LGBTQ episode.
It really has.
Hi.
I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to like turn it into a
Ameet,
No, you're good.
episode.
Yeah. Ameet, and I'm glad that we're talking to you, but I also want to be clear that if people are going, how come you're only picking these callers? Because you're the people who called. If people want to talk about other things, they need to call in. So we're glad that you called in, though. Sometimes things just take on that theme. So what's going on? What do you think, Fee? Should I read this out? Maybe I should read this out.
Yeah.
How can I have a productive conversation with someone who has made subtle transphobic statements in front of me? What should my role be as I attempt to be an ally?
Oh my goodness, this is such a beautifully phrased question. You have like a follow-up. You clearly know your way around these shows. Ameet, thank you for giving us such a gorgeous...
I'll be honest. It was kind of a stream of consciousness that your call screener kind of like distilled into something meaningful.
Oh my gosh.
We have wonderful call screeners.
Yes,
I'm so
indeed.
grateful.
Ameet, give us a little bit more context.
Yeah. So I was at the gym this week, and I have a person who shows up around the same time as me, and fairly senior person, knows what they're doing, and they happen to reference a particular figure in the fitness industry who happens to be a trans woman, and over the course of this entire conversation, he made allusions to the fact that she was trans and also dead named her multiple times while intentionally knowing. Like, I know for a fact that he knows who this person is because he has commented about her name, right? And I did my part of like saying she every time like he misgendered her, and like I also said while I was responding I tried to use her real name, and I feel like it kind of fell on deaf ears. This is not a person I'm like super close to, and at the same time it's a public location, so I didn't want to be super confrontational or anything.
Yeah.
And we were talking about a third person, so I didn't feel like, I don't know, like I felt like I might be kind of like speaking for someone else, and I don't know, just wanted to get your thoughts on how I can approach that conversation and make them see a little bit more on the compassionate, understanding side.
That is a great question, and you honestly did exactly what I would have suggested that you do. Which is make them feel uncomfortable by being correct, if that makes sense. So like I wouldn't want to make any assumptions about this person, right, without knowing them a little bit more. And I definitely wouldn't want to say, oh, well, like they know what dead naming is, or they understand why it might be hurtful. So there's always that level of like, okay, we've had this conversation before, now it's intentional, versus like this person maybe is older, maybe doesn't know many trans people, if any, that are out to them. Like we really can't worry about that. That's on them. However, a really good thing to try doing is exactly what, Ameet, you have done, which is, when Eric and I go somewhere and I am misgendered, Eric knows that I prefer not to be like, excuse me, no, that's not my gender. Please use they, them, and not she, her. I just don't normally feel like that's something that I am comfortable doing for me. But Eric knows that a really good way to counteract that and show up for me is to refer to me in the third person randomly and use they. And the people who care will catch on. And the people who don't care, I don't really care to correct them because that's good information that maybe they're not needed in my life or need to be super close with. So I think you did as much as you can without investing more time and energy into building a relationship around education with this person. And I don't know if that's something you want to do. It's not something that's required of you for sure. I think you handled it perfectly. And I think that even while it felt like it fell on deaf ears this time around, if more people did what you did to that person and just subtly used the correct pronouns, used her correct name, it would start to sink in because we are mirroring animals, right? We mirror each other. We feel awkward when we are the minority in a situation or like we are holding an opinion that other people aren't holding. It can be very uncomfortable. And so the discomfort of having to take that person out of one box and put her into another box is going to be outweighed by the discomfort of keeping her in that box while everyone else has her in the correct one, right? So it's really just a matter of understanding that it's coming from a place of discomfort for them, most likely, and saying, okay, you are clearly engaging with this discomfort and choosing comfort over discomfort, selfishly, right? How do I make it more uncomfortable for you to be wrong than to be correct, right? Because there's going to be discomfort on some level, but if you can be like, hey, that's good. And like positive affirmation is great too. Like, oh, hey, like you used my pronouns today. I really appreciate it. Or like you asked me a thing and didn't assume anything about, this or that. Like that was really awesome. Thank you. And just
the last server at a restaurant who asked V for their pronouns and used them.
Didn't even ask. Just looked at me and knew, and I felt so seen.
V tipped the bill.
Oh, wow.
V tipped the bill. It's like, V took the bill amount and then made that the tip as well. It'll do well. As a partner, as a supportive partner, I would have different advice. I appreciate you speaking up because...
And that's literally all it is my perspective. I would be curious what you thought.
Well, number one, for the people that I do care about, when they do use the correct pronouns, maybe after the conversation, I'll pull them aside and go, hey, that made me really happy. And I know that V felt seen. And that means a lot to me. Thank you. So that support has worked. I've also talked with my feet and people who have just been obstinate when it comes to that. I just stopped engaging with them. There are people who I talked to, that I met via Facebook or, through different connections with atheist groups who really were just dead set on invalidating any conversations about gender until, the end of time. And I just stopped talking to them. And when they were like, hey, what's going on? I was like, I don't feel comfortable talking to you. Like, it's not interesting or fun for me, and you obviously don't care, so you get to be alone. I didn't say it that way, but I was like, I'm not interested in a relationship with you anymore. And having somebody exit their life because of something they did can be an eye-opener for some people, and that may lay some groundwork. And then if it's somebody you really don't care about, V is right, you don't owe them. But at the same time, if you're not personally invested in them, then making them feel like a piece of shit can maybe help with family who do care about them, who are worried about like them bringing it. You know what I mean? Like, oh man, Uncle so-and-so is a real piece of shit, but I don't want to say anything and make Christmas uncomfortable. You being an absolute bastard to that person might make their family feel more comfortable come Christmas. So maybe it's an all approaches type of thing. I don't feel like you're doing the wrong thing, I guess. But get a feel for where you are and what you can and are willing to do. And also remember that being an ally doesn't mean you're everyone's ally. Some people will say, oh, well, as an ally, I think you should do X. And somebody else says, well, to be an ally, I think you should do the exact opposite. If you try and make everyone happy, you're never going to get anything done. But getting feedback, listening, talking to people, and understanding what you did in this call, I think is crucial and does make a big difference. That's what I have to add, which is exactly the opposite of what you said. So I apologize, I guess. I don't know. I don't apologize.
That's not the opposite. It's just another perspective.
Yeah.
Ameet, what are your thoughts?
No, I was just thinking if it were better to, just say nothing and move on instead of, I don't know, like trying to approach this conversation with someone who's practically a stranger. And it's really weird because this man at the gym was very respectful of this bodybuilder's achievements, but so dismissive and disrespectful of her gender. So I was just like, well, yeah, you don't really respect the person then.
Yeah, it's a weird kind of disconnect that happens. What I would say ultimately is if you feel like this person might just need that extra little like nudge in the right direction, a good way to start that conversation and see if they're interested, because if they're not, frankly, it's useless, it would be to ask the question, right? And be super blatant about it and be like, hey, I'm just wondering, you seem to respect this person a whole lot. Why aren't you using her name? And just have him answer that. And it might be, I keep forgetting and I try to do better, but it's just so in my brain. Like, oh, okay, cool. Well, do you want me to next time we talk about it, let me know. We can tackle that. Or if it's, I don't think trans people are real, then you can be like, oh, okay, cool. You're clearly an asshole. Bye. There are different responses that he could give that would give you a clue. A, if he wants to have that conversation with you, which, frankly, he might not. Or B, if he does, what kind of conversation that would be, and if it's something that you feel comfortable having yourself. Because you can't be expected to prove the existence of an entire group of people to somebody you don't really know. But if all it needs is just a little bit of that nudge, then, yeah, if you feel comfortable doing it, then that's a great first step.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. I needed people in my life who were gracious and patient to help me learn things like that at the start. And when I was asked the question, hey, Eric, do you need some help when it comes to, referring to people by preferred pronouns? I said, you know what? I'd actually really love that. And when I first kind of got pronouns wrong, they were like, oh, Eric, here's the correct pronouns. This is long before you. And I was like, oh, fuck, I'm an awful person. They're like, no, you asked me to help. So, and it was just through gracious, kind people who were in my life who were like, hey, just in casual conversation, if that comes up, I'll bring something up and let you know, flag it. That had a huge impact on the way that I was able to engage with other people throughout the rest of my life. And I'm forever grateful. Yeah. Give them the opportunity if you want. Yeah. Ameet,
awesome.
Hopefully this was a useful conversation to you. This was definitely on brand for the day's calls.
Oh, gosh.
All right.
Well,
thank you so much.
Thank you for answering my questions.
Absolutely.
Take care.
Bye.
We have a few people who are saying, how can I get links and things out to the hosts? If you pop them in our Facebook group, we will read them, and it'll also give other people the opportunity to engage with those things as well. Same with the Discord. We're not always in as often, like after the show. It takes us an entire day to put out the podcast, all the clips, the thumbnails, and all of that stuff, but we try to get in there when we can, and we will read it.
Yeah, or you can email us. Eric said at the beginning we don't normally read emails. What he meant was we don't read them on air. We do read them. So if you would like to contact us with your thoughts about the show or our cheeseballiness, you can reach us at
my smarminess.
Contact skepticgeneration@gmail.com. And we will read it.
Should we take the call in the queue, or should we move on to Super Chats?
I think we should move on. I don't think that they've gotten screened yet.
Got it. Mike, call in earlier next week.
Yeah, absolutely.
Alrighty then. Let's read Super Chats. Before we do, hey everybody, thank you so much for watching. If you want to support us, please consider doing so. Patreon.com/skepticgeneration. That's patreon.com/skepticgeneration. Every little bit helps to make this show happen. And we are really, really trying to get the show to cover its own costs. And so every little bit helps get us closer to making that a reality. Yeah. And speaking of Super Chats, go right in with that. With that, Super Chats go towards making the show happen. For sure, we are going to be putting every penny into like re-upping call-in studio, making sure that we can make all of the calls free. Yeah, I could wax on about that, but we sincerely appreciate it. If you want to support us and you don't want to do it that way, totally understood. Please like, subscribe, share, hit the notification bell. All of those things help. Get involved. Sorry, let's read some Super Chats. I'm sorry. It's been a while, and I realize I'm going on.
All right, Viper Zang sent $5 and says, I'd rather have some good cheese balls than a fancy wheel of stink cheese. Get out of here.
I mean...
You have been banished.
I like stinky cheese, though.
Stinky cheese is the best cheese.
But I think they're talking about us being cheese balls.
I mean, I know, and we're touched. We are. We love you, but also like, oh my God.
Sean Isherwood sent £5 and says, Mea culpa, all circles are indeed round by definition. We're going back to the circles! Mea culpa, all circles are indeed round by definition. However, some of them are square, example in the taxicab metric and the maximum metric. Yeah, those aren't mutually exclusive. If you have some weird universe where a circle looks like a square to us, if it's a circle, and another thing looks like that circle, it resembles that circle, then by definition it would be round. I know, but yeah. Sorry, your turn.
And Viper Zhang sent another 5 and says, in my opinion, as an LGBTQ plus ally, the point is supporting them without being them. It's the same way I'm white and pro BLM. Yeah, exactly. In order to be a good ally, the bare minimum is understand that people who are not like you deserve what you have, and you try and help them get it. It's really the bare bones of that. And if you find that you are having trouble humanizing people who are unlike you, that's a really good sign that you might want to like go get some therapy, or make friends with people who are less like you, and just expand your worldview a little bit, because it can happen. And I know I used to be that way.
Yeah. Since we have a few extra minutes. Oh, Ameet Matthew sent $10, says, by the way, this show is my jammy jam.
Nice.
Thank you, Ameet.
Nice.
Can I offer up one other bit of story?
You are like
no, I'll offer it
by
up
the
next
fire,
week.
rocking in the rocking chair, like I have
Sit around
story.
the fire,
Yeah.
kids. I'm going to tell you a story.
All right.
Now, maybe we'll talk about privilege next week.
I think that's a little bit heavy to hit in the last 2 minutes of the show.
Fair.
But
fair.
Yes, always down to talk about privilege.
Right.
All right, you guys.
And guess what? All of these things intersect. You can be atheist and somebody who's a minority, and those things intersect, and that's intersectionality, fuckers. Sorry. I'm in a mood. I'm in a mood.
You are enjoying.
It's your fault.
The show.
Not your fault. Yes, I am.
Okay, cool.
I am. But thank you all. We're going to continue to make the show as good as we can. We're so glad you came to join us. Until next time, we're glad we had this talk.